So this week, Prime Video went ahead and dropped their new Spider-Noir Television Series. So in this video, I will be going into full spoilers on my thoughts on the show, breaking down some of the things that went down in this season, some of the villains that we got to see, and so much more. So without further ado, let's get right into the review. So to just quickly reiterate my thoughts on Season 1 of Spider-Noir, I thought it was great. Prime Video really cooked up something good here. The cinematography was absolutely beautiful. At times, the background was a little wonky with the CGI, but that's a little nitpick. You could see right past it. It's not really that big of a deal. The portrayals from all the actors and actresses were really good. Nicolas Cage was great as Spider-Noir, and some of the villains were really good in this show as well. The action sequences were very entertaining. The comedy was there when it needed to be, and it was at the right tone, and it was good. So all that overall made a great season. So kicking things off, let's talk a little bit about the pacing of this show. I thought the pacing was really good and well done in this show. Nothing felt too rushed. All the character arcs were very comfortably completed by the time the credits rolled on the 8th and final episode. Nothing in this story happened too slow and nothing happened too fast. The pacing was really well done in this season. So I want to quickly talk about the story now. The story from start to finish, episode 1 to episode 8, was really good and well handled, especially when it came to the character of Ben Reilly. Ben Reilly in this show is a great and very interesting character, but what intrigues me most about his character this season is his story, especially his backstory. You know, he starts the show as, of course, Noir, his alter ego. He's saving people, everything, but then he loses his wife, causing Ben to stop being the Spider. And that to me is great storytelling. I love when the story has something bad happen to the hero that causes him to question himself and his alter ego, causing him to stop being that other version of himself. You know, we've seen it with Daredevil and Daredevil Born Again, when he loses somebody, and because of that, he wants to get rid of his alter ego and live a normal life. Ben Reilly in this show definitely reminds me of that, because throughout all 8 episodes, he doesn't want to be Spider-Noir anymore. He reluctantly comes back after so much convincing from his friend, and he doesn't want to come back. He doesn't want to come back, yet he does. And another thing is, throughout the show, he was always described as a selfless person, as a nice person, but where we stand currently in the story, there was hints of him not being nice, you know, him not wanting to come back, and the story just leaned into that so well with his character, and it intrigued me, to say the least. But when he comes back and you get those scenes with Spider-Noir, it is great. It is handled with perfection, and they don't make him unstoppable in the show. They make him very human, you know? He's able to be defeated, and that makes the stakes so high in every action sequence you get. And speaking of action sequences sprinkled within this story were done to perfection. Every fight scene was great. Every fight scene was suspenseful, because they didn't make Spider-Noir unstoppable. They didn't. Throughout all 8 episodes, he definitely faced multiple challenges with these villains. Whether it was this TV show's version of Electro or this TV show's version of Sandman, they were able to beat up Ben Reilly. They were able to challenge him, and that's what I like. I like when they don't make a hero unstoppable. They give him villains to go up against that challenge him, whether that's physical, mental, spiritual. It is just such great writing when that happens, and that made the story so good and entertaining. But real quickly, before we move on to the next segment, I just quickly want to touch upon some of the action sequences that we do get throughout this season. But one that stood out to me the most, that actually ended up being one of my favorite of this season, was when Spider-Noir fought Megawatt, who is basically this show's version of Electro. But yeah, this fight scene was really good and very high stake and suspenseful, because anytime Spider-Noir would hit Megawatt or literally do anything to him, he'd get electrocuted, making it basically very difficult for him to defeat Megawatt. But it is in this fight that you really see the battle IQ of Spider-Noir. You know, him looking around, seeing all the sources of light and energy that Megawatt is using to defeat him, and then taking that all down and basically stripping him of his power and defeating him that way was very, very clever. And it's just scenes like that where he uses his IQ in his fights that I really enjoy, because you don't really get to see that much with superheroes, them using their surroundings and stuff like that to defeat the villain. You know, usually they're always able to just so easily get through the villain using either a weapon that they have or combat. But no, Spider-Noir, yes, tried to use his webs and everything, but it wouldn't really work, because anytime he'd hit him, he'd get electrocuted. So he had to use his brains instead of his fists and webs. And that to me is really, really really great to see. But yeah, not just in this fight scene, but in other ones, such as when he fought Tombstone, who is basically very reminiscent of the Lizard, because he has very hard skin to break. But yeah, in that fight scene where he's trying to give Tombstone the antidote, and he's fighting back, of course, he does more clever things, like hitting him with empty boxes, or using that sticky power that he has to climb up above him and drop down on him in a surprise attack. Clever things like that in these fight scenes are so awesome to see, and that just, to me, makes the fight scenes even more entertaining. When the hero doesn't always use his powers, sometimes he actually has to use his brain, which is unusual for a superhero with powers, but yet that's what makes it so awesome. So now the next thing I want to talk about in this review are the villains in this show, because man oh man, I think they are definitely clever, but at the same time they're like the Dollar Tree versions of the villains that we know and love from the original Spider-Man universe. You know, you have Tombstone, similar to the Lizard, or this show's version of Sandman, or the granite-skinned version of Sandman, but still basically Sandman, and then you have Megawatt, who's basically Electro. So yeah, they were kind of like Dollar Tree versions of these villains, but they were still good villains overall, you know, like, it's not like I hate them. It's not like them being the kind of rip-off version of those villains is a bad thing. They were still good villains. It's just I kind of saw like a parody with them, you know, but it was still clever to involve the characters like that and involve those powers like that. They were still good characters nonetheless. So let's talk about them. Starting with Silvermane, the main kind of villain. Like, this guy, he's the most original villain in this show. But yeah, I didn't really find this villain too intriguing. I definitely enjoyed his character, but the level of threat he was never really presented in this show. That's my only little nitpick, really. One of my only little nitpicks in this entire show is that I feel like he wasn't that big of a threat. Literally, the thing that made him a threat was the team he had. Without the team, he was just an old man with a cane. Like, there was nothing really special about him, you know? Like, even if he had a gun, there was really nothing special about him, you know? Megawatt, Sandman, and Tombstone, they were all the big bad villains, but this guy was really not the greatest villain, you know? Like, he acted like a villain, definitely, I'll give you that, but he didn't really pose any threat to the hero, you know? And that just sucked to say, because in the beginning of the show, when I first saw him, I was like, oh, he's gonna be a good villain. Let's see how that turns out. By the 8th episode, he dies from a bullet wound, like, that easy. Dude, like, what if somebody, like, kicked the cane from under you? Would you have fallen over and just died right on the spot? Like, was it really that easy? You know what I'm saying? Like, I expected him to be a bigger threat and just have Silvermane's, like, goons, like Tombstone or Sandman or Megawatt be, like, the side villains, you know? Like, the people who do a little bit of the dirty work. But no, they did all the dirty work. Literally, every evil thing that happened was not by Silvermane's hands. Yes, it was by his orders, but it wasn't by his hands. You know, he didn't individually go down to that bank and rob it, you know? Obviously, his goal was to run against the other guy who was running for mayor. You know, that was the goal that he had in mind. But yeah, he just wasn't a threat in this show. He just really wasn't, and that disappoints me, because he was still a good character, it's just he wasn't a threat. But now I want to talk about the Sandman of this show, who ended up being a really cool character, actually. Like, I really liked this villain, because he was kind of not really a villain, to be honest with you. I wouldn't call him an anti-hero. He didn't really do anything heroic at all, you know? He even fought Spider-Noir in the finale and tried to kill him, but he wasn't a villain. Even through the entire show, he was not a villain, you know? He was just like a henchman. He was getting bossed around, you know? You could tell from the get-go that there was good inside him, you know? And he got a happy ending and everything, and I'm so glad they didn't, like, kill his character off or get rid of him or anything like that, because he deserved a happy ending, because he wasn't necessarily so evil that he was, like, irredeemable. He still got a happy ending at the end of the show, you know? He got to spend his time with his love interest, Cat Hardy, who actually had a kiss with Spider-Noir. I guess that really didn't mean anything. I mean, they were supposed to run away together. That didn't mean anything either, but we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, he wasn't really too big or bad of a villain, and he got a very satisfying ending in my opinion. I didn't want to see him die, and really the entire point of his character was to be saved, you know? Literally, Cat's goal within this show, the reason her character was in this show, was to help the Sandman, redeem him or fix him, help him, because he basically was dying, you know? The sand was like killing him, you know? Every time he transformed, more of his body would turn into sand, you know? So you kind of felt bad for this character. character. You know, you didn't want to see him get destroyed or defeated. No, you kind of felt bad for him. And that was brilliant writing. For a villain, no less, you know? You're supposed to be rooting against him, but you're not necessarily rooting against him. You're not rooting for him, but you're also not rooting against him. And I love that. But now let's talk a little bit about Megawatt. Megawatt, bro. Megawatt is so evil in this show, but I love it. I love how they made his character. He was 110% irredeemable. Literally, by the end of the show, he wanted to destroy the formula and go against his boss, Silvermane, just because he felt like it. He felt like not being a puppet, even though he's not a good enough villain to be standing on his own. Like, yes, he's a dangerous villain because, dude, he posed some serious challenges to Spider-Noir. You know, he was a very powerful villain, but dude was mean, to put it in the simplest, friendliest terms, because I don't want to curse here. But yeah, he was an evil character, you know? Like, he even flipped against Sandman and almost killed him, you know? And he did crush his arm, which I thought was crazy, and my jaw definitely dropped to the ground when that happened. But yeah, his mannerisms, his character was definitely a good one, you know? When you see a villain, you want to hate them, but you also want to like the fact that you hate them. And that's what I look for anytime there's a villain, and within this villain, you could definitely sense that. I mean, you want him dead from the very start, that's definite, but you still like his character when it comes to villains, you know? You're rooting for this character to die, and when he finally does, it is so satisfying when he gets hit by a train. It is one of the most satisfying parts of this show. But for him to be ultimately the big bad villain was very shocking to me. Like I said, I expected Silvermane to be the big villain of this show, and then the Dollar Tree Electro ends up being the big villain. That was definitely a turn that I did not expect, but I wasn't mad at it, because he is a very, very powerful villain, so it made sense. You know, each and every villain, they were so redeemable, you know? Tombstone, he was redeemable, because at the beginning, he wasn't a villain. Like, at the beginning of the show, he wasn't a villain. He was talking to his journalist friend, you know? He wasn't a villain. And then when he got cured, he wasn't mad. He was happy. And with Sandman, all he wanted to do was be with Cat, and he got that at the end. I guess the only real evil one besides Megawatt was Silvermane, but he wasn't really a villain, like I said, you know? He was literally just an old man with a cane, basically. But yeah, still, all these villains, they had a very satisfying ending, in my opinion, and they were overall great characters throughout the show. So now quickly, I want to touch upon the side characters in this show. Kat, Janet, Joe/Robbie, and Frankie. Now, starting off with Kat, a lady who broke Spider-Noir's heart, she's a good character, you know? I don't really have much to say about her character. She doesn't really do much besides sell Spider-Noir's identity out to that crazy old lady who wants to take his blood to reduce the age of her son. That was a crazy subplot that ended up making me kind of hate her character, because she's all about, oh, I'll run away with you, yeah, let's go run away. And then she reveals Spider-Noir's identity and then almost gets him killed. So yeah, like, her character's alright, but that's irredeemable. But yeah, not much to say there. Then Janet, the assistant at Spider-Noir's investigation place, she's a good character. She definitely is behind some of the comedy within this show. The way she, like, is always taking the money whenever it's, like, put in front of her, like, no questions asked. She's given, like, $100 or $1,000. Doesn't even ask where it comes from. It could be, like, illegal gambling money or something, and she just grabs it. It's so funny, honestly, and she's a great character. She clearly cares about our main character, and she's just an overall great character. But now it's time to talk about the reporter, Robbie/Joe. He's a great character. He was definitely my favorite side character. Just the way he was so loyal to Spider-Noir was definitely great, and just his character overall was good, you know? One of my favorite scenes with him was when he tried to talk to Tombstone, you know, interact with him, because they're friends, you know? So every scene we got with the two of them was a great scene, and yeah, he was just a great character. But now I want to talk about the little kid, Frankie, who ended up being a good character as well. You know, a lot of comedy with him, you know, not wanting to do his homework or yelling at the guy to fix the table when it was wobbly at the end of the show. He was just a funny character, and when he asked Spider-Noir to, like, come in, maybe have a hot meal or a shower, like, that was also a funny little scene too, you know? These characters were big comedic relief in this show, I definitely feel, but that doesn't take away from their characters. That's not a bad thing. They were still great side characters. So now, with all that being done, let's get right into the final episode, episode 8, and the ending for it, because this episode was another really good episode within this show. it wrapped things up very nicely with great action sequences and great suspense. Now, let's get right into it. So, basically our villains come to Spider-Noir's apartment, picks him up, takes him down to the place where, like, throughout the entire series, our villains were always hanging out at this, like, bar/music place. But since Spider-Noir had the antidote for all of the people with powers, he tried to take the jacket that had all the antidotes in it on the way out, but Megawatt steered him away from that. But yeah, this scene was definitely clever because when they do get down to the club place, it's a very suspenseful scene because you don't really know what's gonna happen. And big old Silvermane is asking Ben Reilly to call Spider-Noir, but this entire time you're thinking, oh, he's gonna keep denying it because he is Spider-Noir. But no, he actually calls that number, and even Silvermane talks to him, and it turns out to be Robbie behind it, and he even comes in the full suit and impersonates Spider-Noir until Megawatt zaps him and almost kills him, and then freaking Spider-Noir's powers aren't working because he lost so much blood in like the episode before. So the entire time under the table he's trying to get the web out, but he can't, and while this is all happening, his friends are almost getting killed in front of him. But he finally gets the web out, and he's revealed to be Spider-Noir instead of the journalist. He's revealed to be Spider-Noir, and everybody's so shocked. It's a great scene overall. And then that just releases a spur of events where then Silvermane runs away, but Cat is chasing him with a gun, and then Spider-Noir, the Sandman, and Megawatt fight, and it is such a good fight scene. There was this scene where Spider-Noir grabbed two cars and then crushes the Sandman. Like, that was a great scene. And this final battle was just overall very, very satisfying and a great and suspenseful final battle. And yet again, the power of Megawatt just being on full display, absolutely destroying Ben Reilly, you know, almost killing him, you know. He's electrocuting the crap out of Spider-Noir to the point where even Sandman is like, all right, enough, you know, and then he gets involved once Megawatt zaps his girl. But then freaking he tries to fight back the Sandman, but dude, Megawatt basically destroys Sandman's hand in a crazy jaw-dropping scene, which I already didn't expect the Sandman to try to fight Megawatt, but I did not expect Megawatt to basically almost kill Sandman. But then Spider-Noir used his webs and then threw Megawatt in front of a train where he got crushed, which is a very satisfying ending and a great conclusion to a overall great final battle. Now, what ends up happening to Silvermane, on the other hand, is one of the weakest endings for any villain. He's like acting all tough and everything, like he's in this mirror room and he's talking to Cat, being all intelligent, and then when he's out of mirrors, he stands in front of her, despite her holding a gun to him, being like, oh, you wouldn't pull the trigger, you wouldn't pull the trigger. She pulls the trigger and kills him, and then he's like, oh, I'm fine dying like this. Are you? That was embarrassing, you know, like, I wouldn't want to go out like that. And then dude falls to the floor like a sack of potatoes. Like, it was a very weird ending for his character. You know, I expected a lot more of a challenge, but he was not a challenge at all. But yeah, I guess that was like another little nitpick, you know. There wasn't many negatives about this show, but I found like 3 in this video. So, but yeah, Sandman and Cat have their happy ending, and she's talking to Riley all like, oh, if we were in another world, I would have ran away with you. Really? You're gonna pull that? We're not in another world, we're in this one, and you left me. Like, why are you giving me hope? Like, go run away with your guy with one arm. Like, shut up and go away. And she's like, oh, go to hell. You go to hell. You freaking left me. Like, that's at least how I would have treated the situation, but that's just me. Yeah, it was a satisfying ending, definitely. A great season finale. And then in the ending scene, all of our good guys and heroes are all together, and it's a nice, beautiful ending. We get one last shot of Riley using his powers to get his hat. He shoots a web across a room and gets his hat. That was a cool little last minute touch that ended the show. And as the credits start rolling, I just am thinking in my head, wow, I just witnessed a great season of a show. But with all that being said, that is all for this video. I really liked this show. It was great. I am really hoping that Prime renews it for a season 2, and if it does, I will definitely be watching. But I throw it off to you guys. What did you guys think of season 1 of Spider-Noir? And if you guys made it this far in the video, I just want to thank you. This was a very long video, but I hope you enjoyed it from start to finish, and if you did, please like and subscribe. But with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.